Okay. Yes, it says it's recording.
Okay. Well, good morning and good afternoon, everyone. On the east and west coast of the United States, this is Joseph Antel here with Adjuvant Protocols for Healing. My book that is out, and these webinars are devoted to the various protocols that are in this book and my insights into them, and an expansion and an explanation of why I've chosen the products that I've chosen. A few weeks ago, Dr. Hoyt and his wife, Joanne, asked me about Parkinson's syndromes. And so I created this PowerPoint and recording. You will notice that some of the PowerPoints are terrible. We are going to fix those. We just ran out of time and a good scanner. So that will be corrected. As we know, whenever we look at conditions, any type of conditions, those of us in the modalities that we find ourselves, we are really not interested in disease as a primary focus of what we do. We are here, and our intent with our primary modalities, and then nutrition as an adjuvant modality, we're here to replenish with nutrients at the cellular level and the energetic level. So remember that the nutrients that I recommend are all living substances. They are not made in a laboratory. They are from food, from the earth, as much as possible. That's not 100%, but that is 80%. So, because in fact, we serve life not because it is broken, but because it is holy. Now, that's a quote from Mother Teresa. So it's important that the tools that we use through nutrition, through herbal remedies, through the earth substances, frequencies, nutritive factors, that we first see the person whole. We don't see the disease first. We cannot start from the premise of what is wrong. We can only start from the premise of what is right. That is the chemistry, the natural chemistry that a healer uses, both physically and energetically. And I also have today a colleague of mine. Her name is Karen. I'm not going to give you her last name. And she's from the Midwest. She's an energy healer and a practitioner who has been working with and challenged with Parkinson's. And so we'll have her at a certain point, because she has found some things that will be very helpful with your clients, your family, or whoever you're helping with this. So let's get started. The protocol from my book, as you can see, has quite a few products. I'm going to mention the also consider some of them, but the primary products we're going to focus on today is ribonucleic acid, neurotrophin and or hypothalamus, St. John's wort, and Kalma Plus. It doesn't mean that there aren't other things that you would use, and Karen's going to talk about that in her section here on this call. So what is Parkinson's syndrome? Now, remember that as I entitled, Parkinson's is a broad syndrome. It was originally called shaking palsy, but the Parkinsonism range is vast. Each person is unique in their symptoms. But what is it? It's a long-term central nervous system degenerative disorder. No cause has yet to be discovered. As with many conditions that medical science works with, we have many more tools using earth substances, supplements, herbs, homeopathics, other things that we use than they. And that is our advantage. There is no cure according to them, but using substances always, natural substances always brings about a change that moves toward either plateauing so they don't get worse or improvement. So the primary causes, of course, have to do with, at least what I could find and what my experience has been working with this, is brain injury, which we will touch upon. Exposure to pesticides is huge, huge. And this is, remember that, that men are more likely to get this because they tend to be more exposed to Agent Orange, men that use Roundup, men that are using solvents that they breathe in. So that's a big one. Smoking can lead to this. Aging is a very important one because as we age, genetic mutation changes. It shouldn't, but it does. So there's that factor. Plus, most of the conditions, most people that are challenged with this and suffer with Parkinson's and the related syndromes are usually older. The onset, according to medical science, is 60 years old. But the genetic inheritance, you could say, and the breakdown as we age of the correct gene expression. And I'm going to show you some products that help with this, that help stop this or slow it down. And then, of course, the use of any type of, the overuse, I should say, of any type of chemicals that relate to the nervous system. Aspirin, Tylenol, any type of pain medications known as NSAIDs. And also the overuse of the most widely used drug in the world, caffeine, coffee, tea, and these sports and energy drinks. We don't need to pick on any particular name. They're all terrible. So this is something that I have found with people that are challenged with this, is that in fact, if I can get them off of caffeine altogether, we see some really nice changes in them, in their sleep patterns and other patterns. And there is a book called Caffeine Blues. I forgot the author's name. If you get that, he teaches you a lot about caffeine. People don't realize that caffeine stays in your bloodstream. It affects your nervous system 8 hours, up to 8 hours after. So now we know that Parkinson's syndromes, the symptoms, involuntary muscle movement, stiffness, difficulty keeping straight up, standing, fatigue, dizziness, and of course the shaking and the tremors. There's others too that that I did not put in here that come under this. I gave you the main ones. Now, the medical approach is physical therapy, which is good, exercise, of course, discontinuing a lot of these chemicals and working with medications. And I have an article that lists these medications and tells you a lot about the side effects and the implications and which are the better ones and which are not. And of course, dopamine is a primary one that they chemically use. And we'll get into an explanation of that. So Parkinsonism, Parkinson's, was originally called shaking palsy, but it was named after James Parkinson's in 1812. And you know the explanation. And some wonderful people in our lives, famous people. Michael J. Fox is probably the main person that we think about. Muhammad Ali. Obviously, I don't know why Michael J. Fox, that cause. You can imagine Muhammad Ali from being a boxer. Alan Alda recently, and that could be, you know, anything, chemicals on the set to hereditary to maybe he had a brain trauma. And of course, the wonderful voice of Linda Ronstadt that has been challenged with this now and can no longer sing, which is very sad. So now, some of you, most of you, all of you, like my esoteric implications. And so I thought I would give you just a few without getting too, I always try to let my perception work with these esoteric implications that are gentle, that are not, would not be interpreted as judgmental, because it's not its intent. So the first one, of course, is as said in somewhere, the Bible or the Gita, is the sins of the father are passed onto the generations. That is the genetic factor. So there is that piece that is huge in this syndrome. There is also things related to, which I'll finish with today, a paragraph from Mona Lisa Schultz, her book, about information that we're given as a young person that we take into our cellular network. The other is putting off care. The people that tend to suffer with this are individuals that have taken care of everyone else but themselves. Now, whether that's, none of these are true of everyone, but we need to, as I have emphasized to you in the last few years in my teaching, we need to take care of ourselves first. That is not self-centered. That's life-centered. And so we can only serve others and heal others to the extent that we are well and we are healed physically, mentally, and emotionally. And the parallel with men getting this is, as I've said many times, most men ignore all signs and symptoms, or most of them, until it's falling off, basically, as the way I say it. So ignoring the signs of deterioration is not good, because damage is taking place. And someone that always says, oh, I'll be fine, that is a sign that they are in denial about really taking hold of something and making the correct changes in life, in our lifestyle. We are life coaches. We're not just practitioners working with signs and symptoms and then applying nutrition. We are teachers of life, how to live better. Also, these are people that, individuals that are tend to become, whether they admit it or not, overwhelmed with the outer world. They are sensitive people that take in too much and overload the brain and then therefore the nervous system, which we'll see in detail here. And then the other is the emptying of the memory cells from whether it's passed on genetically or things that have been said or things that we've taken on helping others. And this is related to the subconscious cleansing, as I put it. And here is where teachers like Monica Corrado and the GAPS approach, gut and psychology syndrome, of working with the small intestine, particularly the whole gut, but particularly the small intestine, because in my opinion, that is what I would call the subconscious of the body. A lot of memory cells get stored there first. Now remember, that's the second brain, which affects the first brain, which is our brain. So let's read a little bit here from this article. And I'm not going to read this whole thing, but I want to start out. Parkinson's disease is a progressive disorder that affects nerve cells in the brain. What part of the brain? We'll get to that. Responsible for body movement. When dopamine producing neurons die, symptoms such as tremors, slowness, stiffness, and balance problems occur. Why do they die? Why don't they have the ability to fire? Why don't they have the ability to sustain themselves and deliver the message? Well, we're going to talk about all of that. And I'm going to show you what nutrients can help with that and prevent the breakdown. Treatments focus on reducing symptoms to enable a more active lifestyle, include medication, diet, exercise, deep brain stimulation, surgery. So that's their tools. We should not judge, right? We have our tools. We respect theirs. And they are needed for these people to some extent. And some of what we do and some of what medical science offers overlap too. We meet in the middle. To understand Parkinson's, it is helpful to understand how neurons work and how Parkinson's syndrome affects the brain. So you can look this up to understand it more. I've put other articles in that I'm not going to read that you can go deeper into this. The more you understand about any condition, and that's why I teach this way, because this is how I understand how to apply my knowledge of nutrition to this. This is a particular frequency out of balance. This is an energy out of balance. Yes, it's physical, but it's also mental and emotional. It's out of balance. So there are nutrients that help, that have an energy that bring that balance in. That's why understanding the condition is very important. Nerve cells or neurons are responsible for sending and receiving nerve impulses or messages between the body and the brain. That's an important sentence. I could teach for an hour just on that sentence. Try to picture electrical wiring in your home. An electrical circuit is made up of neurons, wires connected in such a way that when a light switch is turned on, a bulb will beam. Similarly, a neuron that is excited will transmit its energy to neurons that are next to it. And we're going to see some diagrams of that. And I've spoken of these things before with you. Neurons have a cell body with branching arms called dendrites, which act as antennae, and pick up messages. Axons carry messages away from the cell body. Impulses travel from neuron to neuron. So, and there is a great photo. And I want you to just look, take a minute. I can't expand this anymore. But this nerve synapse, which I have another diagram so you can get an idea. See where dopamine is? This is very important because it is dopamine that helps regulate the transmission between these nerve synapses. So this is very important, and it is the key. Now, I'm not going to read anymore. I'm going to let you read through this, but I did want to show you, they have a very good section on tips for the client. And also, as I said to you, go into these medications, study them. Some of them have really challenging side effects. So, you know, you're going to have to understand these if you're going to advise. If they say, you know, client comes in, I have Parkinson's, I'm on this medication. What do you think of it? What do you think of it? So this will help you in this section. So the first product in, and you probably, if you had looked at the Parkinson's protocol, you probably are wondering why. Why did Joseph pick ribonucleic acid? Well, I'm going to tell you why right now. Now, we know this product as a product that it was made, Dr. Lee put this into the line in 1952. One tablet, this is a very high potency product when you think of amounts of RNA. They're in some of these, they're talking about 10 milligrams of RNA is adequate. This one tablet has 270 milligrams. Now, there are other teachers that actually say, well, you need more. You need like 1,000 milligrams. So we recommend, as you could see in my protocol, if you go back there for a second, that I recommended 6 a day. Dr. Lee at that time said 1 to 2 tablets a day. That was a maintenance dose. So we know this product, again, that it's been in the line since I was born, almost 70 years now. Next year will be 70 years for hypothyroid symptoms. Dr. Goodhart made this product famous for the delivery of T3 from the bloodstream into the tissues. You get a person on just T4, they're still going to have the thyroid symptoms. The lethargy, especially in the first part of the day, hair falling out, hair thinning, skin debilitating. So, because remember, RNA has to do with protein synthesis for the tissue. Okay, so in fact, the mechanism of how proteins work throughout the body, not just hormone that I just mentioned, but proteins, is dependent upon RNA. This is very important related to Parkinson's. Anytime where there's a breakdown of the flesh, and we see this in aging, muscle sags, skin sags, all of this, and lowered resistance. Anytime, that's why products like Chondroplex have it in there. Protofood has it in there because Protofood is an amino acid formulation, very important one, which I'll talk about. So, but anybody that has chronic lowered resistance, you know, when I give them this, now there's some in Chondroplex, but you have to take quite a bit. But my clients, my friends, my family, all of you, if I make recommendations and you say this to me, Joe, I get a cold every winter and it goes into my lungs. I don't care where it goes. Well, I do care, but you know what I mean. It relates to all of the areas. That is chronic lowered resistance. And people that say, you know, when I get sick, it's weeks. I'm sick the whole winter. That is an RNA deficiency. So it's important that you remember that that RNA is very important for people that don't have a strong constitution. Now you can see that by the whole texture of their iris of their eye if you study iridology, who has a weak and who has a strong constitution. You can also look at it by just taking a good history, that people that have been sick off and on their whole lives, these are the people that need RNA. This is what we understand. And also leukocytosis, which is mentioned in this part of this article. So nucleic acid is normally found in all cell cytoplasm. Remember, DNA, RNA, protein. That's all you have to remember. But RNA is the means by which the genetic DNA is translated correctly and then given into the cell cytoplasm to make good proteins. That's what he means by protein synthesis. So leukocytosis, so you have these clients that say, oh, I have a high white blood count. RNA is the #1 product for anybody with a high white blood count. So, and this part here about improving thyroid activity in patients with lowered metabolism, cold extremities, excuse me, and say, and simply say, I cannot stay warm. Even in the summer, the air conditioner's on. So I'm not going to get into the cell itself in all of this, but I gave this to you so you have an understanding. And also what I'm teaching you now about how the process of cellular function, creation, replication, and function works. This is a great, simple article that you should all become familiar with, because they will mention RNA in here. They mention about the proteins, the amino acids, which I'm going to just briefly touch on. So this is the article that I wanted to read that Dr. Lee wrote. He had his own newsletter, and this was written in 1964 in March. I'm sorry you can't see this, but I will make sure, because I do have a clean copy of this. The mysteries of RNA. Much has been discussed in the past few months about ribonucleic acid and DNA. These appear to be the nucleic acids which are responsible for cell self-replication. Thorell comments that the content of our ribonucleic acid in the cytoplasm is an index of metabolism and also of the protein synthesizing capacity of the system. Let us review a few facts about RNA and nuclear protein metabolism. DNA is exclusively found in the nucleus. So we could go back to this right here. And there's your nuclei and your nucleus. That's where the protomorphogen, we have protomorphogens and animals do too. You're eating, when you take a protomorphogen from standard process, that's what Lee figured out, how to get that without the whole cytoplasm or all the rest of the cell. Now, Standard also makes cytosol extracts, which is the whole cytoplasm. Then you have desiccated, which is the whole cell. So they're very distinct. The protomorphogens are for self-regulation, The cytosol extracts are for function, and then the desiccated cell products, which we don't have too many of, other companies basically use desiccated, have all of it, but not in the concentration that is needed for a clinical result. That's the difference. RNA is both found in the nuclear wall, where it is capable of being synthesized, and in certain basophilic cytoplasmic granules. It is the RNA fraction of the nuclear protein, which is a growth promoter when added to tissue in vitro. An increase of the cytoplasmic content of RNA is associated with protein synthesis and cell division. Fisher demonstrated that the non-specific growth promoting properties of beef embryo nuclear proteins are, that's what Dr. Lee made, are primarily due to the RNA fraction rather than the DNA fraction. Wow. It is now widely believed that one fraction of the RNA of a cell is the messenger RNA, is responsible for the transmission of genetic information of the DNA, of the nucleus to the cytoplasm. So the RNA, everyone, is the bridge. It is the means by which the accurate, normal genetic material crosses over into the cytoplasm of the cell to make new proteins, to make normal proteins. That's how important RNA is. Even though you may have had the hereditary challenge of poor genetic material, if RNA is doing its job, it doesn't enter the cytoplasm. It does not influence. It is the monitor. It is the keeper of the pure DNA. You see how important this product is? Wait till you hear the rest of this. It is now widely believed that one fraction of RNA of a cell, as the messenger, is responsible for the genetic transmission. I already read that. This messenger RNA has been identified and differentiated from the total RNA. So there's different types of RNA, and you can read that in the other article. Carnegie Institute scientists in Washington, D.C. have now developed an elegant method of comparing directly the genetic material of different species. This is based on a procedure originated by Dr. Saul at the University of Illinois. With it, the Carnegie investigations can compare both DNA, the nucleic material whose link he believes carries the hereditary information, and the messenger RNA that transports the information to the cell cytoplasm. The Carnegie researchers are applying the technique to other biological problems. They're doing it with cancer. They're doing it now, as we well know, with viruses. McCarthy, for example, and believe me, I will not get into this with you, but this is the forefront of medical science right now. Now, Lee was talking about this in 1964. They were looking at this. For example, has used it to study DNA and messenger RNA in different tissues of a single individual, including, this is what they were studying, brain, liver, kidney, spleen, and thymus. Yes, even though they also admitted that the thymus doesn't do anything. After about 7 years old, they were still studying it. He finds that while DNA is alike in all the tissues, different types of RNA are manufactured by different parts of the animal's DNA molecule. Thus, there is an intimate relationship to the type of cell produced and RNA. So, what is he saying here? He's saying the uniqueness of each cell is dependent upon, what happened here, Lynn? Lynn, did you hit something?
I apparently did, because somebody was saying the slides aren't advancing. So I was trying to, I was just trying to get back to.
Well, I'll let you fix that. I'm going to keep reading. So they're not advancing because I'm reading you what you can't see. So,
okay.
So everybody just listen. And Lynn, I'll let you fix that. So Davidson remarks that the phospholipid or ribonucleic protein particles of the cytoplasm, that's, by the way, that's the protection part of the cell, led themselves admirably as organs of protein synthesis. Even more significantly is his comment. It appears, this is the doctor's comment, it appears probably, therefore, that the phospholipid ribonucleic protein molecules constitute some of the fundamental units out of which living matter is built. So we know that anyway. I'm just looking through here. So that's enough of that. Then this section of the article is really what I wanted to get to. So Dr. Hayden of the University of Gothenburg, Sweden, reported qualitative changes of RNA in the neuroganglia and neuron in Parkinson's disease. He was observing changes. Interestingly enough, the amount of RNA change in the nuclei remained constant, regardless of the patient was seriously ill or only had mild symptoms. So the RNA still was doing its job if it was there in an adequate amount. However, the change in RNA in the neuron or actual nerve cell corresponded to the sensitivity of the severity of the condition. In other words, if you get RNA that, if you lose the correct amount of RNA in that cell, then there's a breakdown in how the cell expresses. We're changed in the most bizarre way in every case. Substantial improvements were recorded in a clinical study of aged patients consisting of pre-senile, senile, and atherosclerosis individuals with severe memory loss. So there's another. And although all patients responded to RNA therapy, Dr. Cameron and his research colleagues noted that as a group, the atherosclerosis got the best grades. So hardening of the arteries, everyone, RNA. So I don't want to get too much into this, but I do want to finish with this. The influence, now we talk about, which I didn't put in my protocol, but general nutrition. Do you have, or does your clients have, the substantial amounts of A, B, C, D, E, F? Because if you don't have that global nutrition in your system, it affects everything else. Here's the example. The influence of vitamin E deficiency on RNA metabolism was investigated in rats, rabbits, and monkeys. The concentrations of both RNA and DNA were elevated in skeletal muscle and bone marrow in vitamin E deficient states. I'm sorry, they were decreased. So this, oh no, they were increased. This can lead to a variety of theories, among them influence that vitamin E has on the repair process of the body. In other words, if they were vitamin E deficient, then the body was trying harder to maintain normal cellular replication. So you can read, when you get this article, you can read it through a few times. During a deficiency, the nucleic acids, due to their effect on cellular duplication, increase in order to synthesize the necessary substances needed for cell repair. In other words, you can't have true cellular repair unless you have adequate vitamin E. So, messenger RNA is a fission yeast. Yeast cells growing experimentally in culture mediated found to have the ability to produce what is known messenger RNA. So I don't want to read all of that, take time. I wanted to finish though with this. Further work to determine if actually RNA has prove conclusively that it was RNA factor which provided the memory. The RNA was involved in the learning process of what they were experimenting on. But the part that I wanted to read to you, oh, here it is. Nucleus of cytoplasm. It was only after the yeast was transferred to a special media in which the food content was considerably poorer that the normal media, that the step up in RNA production was noted. In other words, what they were saying was this product that Dr. Lee has had available to us through standard process since 1952, the best source of RNA on Earth that we know of has to do with, it has to be from a source from nutritional yeast. Standard process gets the best RNA in the world out of Germany. It's not, they don't get it in the US. I can't advance my slides for some reason now. Oh, there you go. So that's the first part of this whole Parkinson consideration. And I had when I first started standard process in New York, when I was the rep there, I had a wonderful gentleman who was a massage therapist, and his father had Parkinson's. And his father would only take one product. So I put him on RNA. And I put him on 6 to 12 a day, but he would only take 6. His shaking, all of his syndromes completely went away. In fact, it cleared so well within, I think it was 6 months, that unfortunately, he stopped taking it. And when he stopped, things came back. And so, and I never heard the outcome of that. But that was one of the Parkinson stories that I had that was quite impressive. The other factor has to do with the part of the, oh, why can't I move this, Lynn? Do you know? Are you the host now, Lynn? Lynn? Did I lose everyone?
We're here.
We're here.
We're here.
Lynn?
Okay, there. Sorry, Joseph, I had to bring up my slides and I'm advancing them for you. I'm not sure what happened, but it seems to be the week that has been. So
okay.
There it is. So you just let me know when to advance to the next slide, and they're seeing my slides.
Okay. So the next part of this has to do with the brain itself. Geez, I wish I could move these around. How can I? Oh, I can't do anything. Did you make yourself host for some reason? Lynn?
No, I'm a co-host.
This will
still.
stop others screen sharing. Do you want to continue?
Okay. Do you want me to?
There you go. There I am. I figured it out. Okay. So, so when we talk about the factor with Parkinson's about head trauma, we have to look at not just one part of the brain. You see this part of the brain, see what the brain looks like. But it is this part right in here. And I have several articles in here that will show you about that we have thought that not me, I have always thought it was this part related to the pineal gland itself. Any neurological condition, especially a lot of conditions, but heart, MS, Parkinson's, all come back to this area of the body. And they're finding that to be true now. Now, they have given the credit and the glory a lot to the hypothalamus gland, which is fine. That is a part. But the hypothalamus gland, as far as say the production of dopamine, for instance, and its influence on the pituitary, that's fine. But you have seen slides that I've given you that the pineal gland is the regulator of the hypothalamus. So you'll see as we move along here. So this area of the pineal gland has to do, as we know, it monitors hypothalamus, providing regulation of the inner and outer world. And what did I say in the very beginning about my perceptions? That this Parkinson's has a lot to do with that from a mental and emotional standpoint. And the other thing about the pineal gland and its production of melatonin comes from David Brownstein. Now, this is from a page of my book, so it's got some of my notes on it. Melatonin is the hormone secreted from the pineal gland located in the brain. Melatonin is able to enter every cell of the body. It is made of an amino acid called tryptophan. So hold those thoughts as I go through my slides here. Tryptophan is very important in the production, and it's very important in Parkinson's because of this area of the brain, the pineal, and this brown area, which we'll get into, which is called the habenula. And you will see from this article, which again, I'm not going to read the whole article, that this part of the brain is really the key to dopamine production. Dopamine and dopamine-rich areas of the brain, like the substantia nigra and ventricle tegmental area, are thought to be important in the processing information related to rewards. When we receive a reward, which could be anything from a slice of cheesecake to like line of cocaine. So just remember, everyone, this is the same area of the brain that relates to addictions. There is corresponding dopamine activity that seems to be associated with how satisfying we expect the reward to be. So, but this, where's the other part that I wanted to read? talks about this part of the brain related to sleep, because this is all related to the pineal gland for sure. And I thought he talks about, maybe he does, I can't find it here. But this part of the brain is, oh, I see, yeah. Oh, here it is. This part of the brain has neurons that project to all areas which are involved in serotonin release. Thus, the habenula is one of the few known structures in the brain that can exert an influence over large populations of both serotonin and dopamine neurons. Serotonin and dopamine related neurons. So there is the money line right there. There's what I really wanted to show you about this, of which part of the brain that we're actually talking about and working with. So now, in the production of dopamine, serotonin, so all of these three neurotransmitters that affect the brain work together. So it's important that we realize that we have to support those factors. And yeah, I should have marked these because I don't want to read this whole thing. Well, I'll leave this one. This article explains the role of dopamine and stress related to this inner and outer world for sure. So now, the nervous system itself, there are over 50 neurotransmitters. Now, we talked about related to serotonin, acetylcholine, and a dopamine. So these are all chemicals that are made in the intestinal tract that affect brain function. So if you want to support these, you've got, of course, the RNA, and you want to look at cataplex G, which has a lot of acetylcholine, or choline, I should say, that energizes and supports acetylcholine, choline itself, and soybean lecithin. So I'm not going to go into those. I put that information in here talking about it. So the other GABA and some of the other neurotransmitters mainly are supported by St. John's wort. So that's why in my protocol, the number 2 product is St. John's wort. So, and here again, noradrenaline, dopamine, ginkgo, and St. John's wort. So, and remember that soybean lecithin is focused on phosphatidylcholine. So here is that choline factor that helps with the acetylcholine, that helps with the dopamine for sure. And this is 2 great articles about that, which I'm not going to get into now. This is why lecithin is so important. Now, I did not put it in this protocol because I couldn't put everything in, but lecithin is a huge part of this whole nerve synapses factors that are going on. Now, here's the diagram. I've shown you this before. It is remember in the first explanation that I gave about dopamine being allowing these neurotransmitters to cross the nerve synapse. So remember, you have 1,000 trillion nerve synapses in your body. You have 100 trillion in your brain alone. So these neurotransmitters, which are the chemicals that balance the activity of the nerve synapse, is the way they come in or leave the nerve synapse has to do with dopamine. And so that's why products like St. John's wort and are so important when we're looking at that, because they are the primary products that help with the primary herb that helps with this whole mechanism to allow it to work better. And basically in the article that I'll let you read through, what it does is individuals with Parkinson's, what happens with them is they stop producing it. So every bit of dopamine, every bit of it is needed. St. John's wort helps conserve these neurotransmitters that are needed for the brain: serotonin, acetylcholine, and dopamine. So that is why St. John's wort is so significant. Yes, you can read if they talk about it, it's an antidepressant and all of that, which is fine. But it's important to realize that the number 2 product in the protocol that I gave you, RNA St. John's wort, is of great importance. And the other product that is down in the also consider is this product Orchex, because it helps regulate if there is a dopamine deficiency that is suppressing this action in the nerve synapse so that the message is not getting across. Orchex will help with that in spite of the lack of dopamine. So that's very important. And it does that by this enzyme called hyaluronidase. So again, it's not the 4 primary, but it's very important for people that are struggling with Parkinson's and declining, because they're not getting the action in the nerve synapses that they need to be. So I put Gotu Kola in here because Gotu Kola is the herb specifically for that part of the brain that we were talking about, that area in and around the pineal gland. So this is from a very old text, and it says here, this is the 2 leaves a day will keep old age away. This is the claim made by Sinhalese for Gotu Kola. This famous longevity plant, which grows profusely in Ceylon in India, the leaves are extensively used. Okay, so who gets this herb, the best of this herb? Religious leaders and orders to develop spiritual power and to prolong the existence of the brain. You can read through this. I've given you this article before. So this particular herb, Gotu Kola. Now, maybe modern herbalists don't recognize it, but they surely recognize it for thousands of years for this very area of the brain, the pineal and those other areas that I was describing. The other herbal blend, along with Gotu Kola, that I created, I call it my brain blend, also has ginkgo in it and also has bacopa in it. So you can read that through if you, someone with Parkinson's or Parkinsonian tendencies, that they could use this on a daily basis. Now, I'm not going to get into the amino acids, but the point I wanted to make, you can read these notes through if you're first time on today, is remember that to make serotonin, you must, which makes melatonin, which helps the hypothalamus gland, you need tryptophan, this essential amino acid. This is all in this product called Protofood, which John Courtney taught me. This is a quote from him. It's the most important product Standard Process makes. Because remember that a lot of these neurotransmitters are made with the assistance of these amino acids and also the correct making of proteins. All relates to what's going on at the cellular network with DNA and RNA. The other is tyrosine. Now, I'm not going to go into all of these. They also relate people with Parkinson's, that they need, what happens when the amount of glutamine, what's the word I was looking for? Dopamine go down, then the amount of glutamine goes up. And you'll read it in these articles, which we won't have time to look at today. So glutamine now is made, we can get glutamine from food, which is great. The body makes its, the body makes its own glutamine, which is good from food. But the essential ones that are destroyed by cooked food are not in there. And so the other one is tyrosine. So tyrosine relates to adrenal hormone, thyroid hormone, pituitary hormone, and hypothalamus. So remember, this is also an amino acid that we must have. And I'll give you just one example. When I talked about the tryptophan, mental confusion. Here is that part of the brain. Remember, we read about it being the satisfaction part of the brain. Mental derangements, mental confusion, melancholia, lethargy, depression, apprehensiveness, photophobia. This all ties in needing this essential amino acid that is in protofood. You can't make this, if you try to make this synthetically, and companies do, you still don't get the full range of its effectiveness as you get from a food source. So this, or an herbal source. So remember that. So now I put in the closed head injury protocol in here because we're talking about the brain and neurotrophin, hypothalamus PMG. And so it's very important that, now, if you've got them on a Parkinson's protocol, then that's great. But you'll see overlapping with the closed head injury protocol and the Parkinson's. Well, let's look at that for 1 second. Oh, Gotu Kola, hypothalamus, neurotrophin. We talked about G for the choline effect, and RNA. So it's all here also in the closed head injury protocol as well. So here is neurotrophin. Now remember that when they're in Parkinson's syndromes, most people have had a head trauma. Now, whether they say that or not, whether they admit that with medical science, we know that that is a factor. So in my opinion, as I said in my protocol, you need to either be on neurotrophin or PMG or hypothalamus PMG. If you wanted to combine them, you could use Neuroplex. So I don't know if I put, yes, I put Neuroplex in closed head injury protocol and also in my Parkinson's protocol. And there's the hypothalamus. Now, my colleague Karen is going to talk to you about this product. One of the big issues and her life experience, one of the big issues with Parkinsonian syndrome of any kind is they can't sleep. So this is a product, well, I'll let Karen talk about it. So Karen, would you like to unmute and tell us a little bit about what you've been doing and this particular product?
Sure. I'll give a little bit of background.
Sure, go ahead.
First, I was first had symptoms of Parkinson's in 2010 and got officially diagnosed in 2011. It was brought on by the trauma that was surrounding my brother's death. And so I have had difficulties sleeping since since the early 90s, but I was always able to get by. But when I developed the symptoms of Parkinson's and then my brother passed away, I really could not sleep. And so I have not slept for more than an hour at a time since 2010.
Oh.
And I was on sleep medication. They had me on 3 different types of sleep medication because you know that's the way that we treat Parkinson's. It's just throw more drugs at it. Mm-hmm. So I was doing 3 different medications and I was still not sleeping very well, getting up in the middle of the night, walking into walls. And then I would get up and read. And so I was standing in the kitchen doing some research and nodded out and ended up falling back. And I'm going, I think it's time for me to look at getting off these sleep medications. So in 2019, I said, I'm coming off all of them. And it's been one of the hardest things I've ever done because I literally slept for 20 minutes at a time and then I'd be awake. And so for 2 weeks. And so since the Christmas Day, 2019, I have been struggling with sleep big time. And the only thing that really got me through it was during those wakeful hours during the night, I would meditate. And, you know, some literature says that meditation is a deeper rest than sleep. So this is how I've been. And then I've always approached Parkinson's as a great teacher. So I'm always looking at the physical, the mental, and the spiritual, and addressing all the Parkinson's symptoms through all of those modalities. So in working with all of these different modalities, I have had the good fortune to work out of a chiropractor's office where the people are very caring. And one chiropractor has done a lot of research on the cannabis products. And so he had ordered this Delta 8. I think the first time he told me he ordered it was in May. And I probably started using it in June. And I used it for a week before I said anything to him because I slept. It was the most extraordinary experience because I slept like 8 hours a night for like several nights in a row. And the first couple of days with this Delta 8, I mean, I was just out. I just was passed out. I slept not only at night, but during the day. And it is a cannabis product, but it is from hemp versus the cannabis plant, is my understanding. And it is not illegal. It's legal. This Delta 8 through Green Roads, I think is the the company that it often will have long periods where the product is not available because it's sold out. So the great upshot is I've been sleeping and I continue to sleep. It's not as consistent as what I wish because I still have some really restless nights. But night before last, I slept 12 hours.
Wow.
And I slept 3 hours in a row.
Are you off your sleep medications?
Yes, I have not taken sleep medications since 2019. Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful.
So that's where I am now, exploring what this product is going to do and trying to keep it. The part of the literature, according to the chiropractor and out of the office, he says that this product can wane in its effectiveness. So I take 2 gummies at night most of the time. I really try to keep it at 1 because I don't want to have it grow ineffective. And that's where I am now. The interesting thing is for it to work the best, I need to take the gummy like by 8 or 8:30 at night. So it goes through the digestive system. And about 10 o'clock, I'm pretty tired and I can lie down and go to sleep often. So
and there's no hallucinogenic effect.
No, there isn't. However, I've tried other cannabis products, but with the Delta 8, I do feel it when I wake up in the middle of the night. There is a sense of being high. There's reality is altered, but it's not a big problem. But if you struggle with paranoia or that type of thing, it might be problematic. But I have a friend who was trying it. That's Tom Hansen, Joseph, who he and Monica struggle with the paranoia, and he was trying this product. So, and I don't know what their experience is with it. So I'm extremely grateful, because with enough sleep, my body recoups and I have less side effects from the drugs that I take for Parkinson's and less side effects of just the symptoms of the disease.
Well, what other standard process products are you on?
Oh, I am taking several. And I'm so glad you talked about St. John wort, because I didn't put that down on my list because I'm not depressed a lot. I have a lot of different things that mitigates the depression.
But remember, the purpose of it is to conserve the dopamine.
Right. I did not know that until today, until just a few minutes ago.
Right.
So I really appreciated the information that you have relayed today. So I take RNA, which they're out right now. I'm out. So I'm doing the hypothalamus instead. I do the cataplex G, the neurotrophin, the neuroplex, and I do the I think it's called cataplex B. The other thing that you recommend is starts with the M. It's with the Malcal. What is that? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Kalma Plus.
Yeah. That's it.
I'm going to talk about that at the end here. Yes. Yeah.
And I've taken the Bacopa, but you have explained things with more background. So we'll adjust what I'm taking. I take one thing that I really love is the Congoplex, and I was interested in your singling that out today.
The RNA, that's right. Yep.
Yeah. Because
thank you so much for sharing your life experience and what you've done and this particular product. So hopefully it'll be in stock for other people. So just for general anxiety and sleep deprivation, for sure.
Mostly for the sleep. Everyone who's taken it has had positive effects with their sleep.
That's great. So great. Thanks so much. Appreciate it, Karen. So the last product I want to review is what Karen was indicating about Kalma Plus. So this is a product that is made up of parathyroid extract and let's see what else is in it here. Bovine parathyroid, so that would be a desiccated, as the label says, and a little bit of calcium, not much. It would be calcium lactate. So the reason I have made this in my top 4 relates to what the original endocrinologists were saying back in 1926. So I'm going to read you parts of this article because time is going on here. But I wanted to finish with this and some closing thoughts. And I'll shrink this down so you can read it a little bit, and I will read it too. Now, they found the relationship with this parathyroid extract by accident. They were experimenting and exploring. So, and remember, it relates to, you could say, well, why parathyroid? Because the parathyroids regulate calcium in the body. So, and I told you that story recently about this doctor when I was on my book tour. She had a 9-year-old. They were going to take his parathyroid glands out because they couldn't regulate the calcium in his blood. So they were going to remove it. So she used the protocol for high calcium in the blood from my book, and they never had to do the surgery. So, so the Kalma Plus is a very underused product by Standard Process. But I want to read this through because it's important to realize what they were thinking and what they found. Calcium balance and healing, parathyroid therapy and leg ulcers, extending the method to other ulcers, the cause of hypocalcemia, early trials in America, the control of sprue, the routine procedure. Since 1926, growing appreciation for the relation between chronic ulceration, Lyme fixation. Now that's calcium. That's blood serum calcium. There was another term for that. And parathyroid therapy has put a completely new aspect upon the prognosis of old chronic leg ulcers, and indeed almost any ulceration. Calcium balance and healing, like the coagulation of blood, the healing of wounds depends on the presence of a subtle amount of calcium in the blood. Defects in this vital factor handicap the body in its healing capacity and ulceration results. This fact is not scientifically demonstrated. This is not, and it has not been proved experimentally. The subject has been developed in the clinic, although, of course, it has been known for the last 15 years. Now remember, he wrote this in 26. So what does that bring it to? Like, 1910 or 11. 15 years that the parathyroid glands regulate the body calcium. And laboratory and clinical experience alike have confirmed the relation that deranged calcium metabolism bears to chronic septic or ulcerative conditions, and that the potency of parathyroid therapy in modifying both the calcium imbalances and the associated ulcerous manifestations. So I'm not going to go into the all of this, but I wanted to mention some highlights. And you can read this all through, and I will get you a better copy of this. Okay, 638, 639. But I wanted to give you this whole chapter because it's quite significant. Early trials in America, when I returned from England in 1926, I was most anxious to test Vinay's new ideas. Already an unusually potent parathyroid product had been in use in Parkinson's disease. Could it be, everyone? Could it be as simple, at least in part, that the parathyroid glands are a key component in the balancing of symptomatology and body results in Parkinson's? Could it be? According to these doctors, that's what they were using. The potent was the word that they used. And I was in position to arrange a prompt trial of the method. The reports that came in sounded like some of the experiences of Alice in Wonderland. It was so fantastic what they were doing with parathyroid extract and Parkinson's, that he was astonished. Here is this famous endocrinologist taking the life experience of other practitioners. One of the first ones was Fresno telling a man age 68 with extensive leg ulcers that had defied treatment for 20 years. In fact, this man had decided to part with his leg. They were going to cut his leg off. And his physician had agreed to operate when his attention was directed to Vinay's method. In 2.5 weeks, that's a short time, everyone, for any supplement or glandular. In 2.5 weeks, healing was so advanced that the patient left the hospital and his improvement continued until healing was complete. So he goes into another, there's a lot of implications to a lot of conditions here. Mainly seemingly dissimilar conditions were treated. Conjunctivitis, at first thought, does not seem to have much in common with sprue, nor bed sores with consumption. But on second thought, one can discern an underlying relationship. Then he talks about celiac disease and the treatment. The routine procedure, at first, the treatment of ulceration, was the same as that of Parkinson's disease. Now, this is where I want to add in to what I've taught you today, one other product, even to be used on and off, but added into the Kalma Plus. As the spleen was found to influence blood calcium, however, the spleen substance was added to parathyroid, the resulting formula paraspleen. So these doctors put together a combination for many conditions, but Parkinson's, and we're treating people with this with a combination of parathyroid glandular and spleen. And that would be, if you're thinking of this, many of you are, is spleen PMG. So very important, and has been used successfully in many thousands of cases. Is that enough of a study for us? It is for me. Cases of ulceration of almost every description. It has been of service in great many cases of paralysis, tetany, and leg ulcers. It has been remember, tetany is, remember what tetany is. It's one of the symptoms of, hold on one second. Does this sound like, this is what tetany is? Intermittent muscular spasm caused by malfunction of the parathyroids, consequent deficiency in calcium. Now, I took that definition out of a medical book. Out of a medical book, everyone. So, unbeknownst to me, when I created my protocols, I must have used this and forgotten about it. So that's why I'm teaching it all to you today. Tetany and leg ulcer. It has been beneficial in cases of gastric ulcer, chronic running ear, and has cured sprue as if by magic. Now, listen, I've read through most of his book. He doesn't use phrases like magic, Alice in Wonderland. These endocrinologists, these organotherapists found something with these two products combined, what would be Kalma Plus and Spleen PMG in standard process. That was extraordinary. It was blowing them away. They could not believe the results they were getting. So all your celiac clients, and by the way, Kalma Plus and Spleen PMG are gluten-free, just so in case you're thinking. The usual dose, the treatment should be 3 months. There has been outlined here a method of curing ulcers, including ulcers of the sinuses, the alimentary canal. This method has been found of considerable prospective adjuvant service, also in the treatment of tuberculosis, which is, as you know, is a very severe bacterial condition. So now, remember that in this article, just to finish out here, Lee was talking about, as we talked about, the use of vitamin E, the use of other supplements beyond the cataplex G, that side of the B, in old age, because the attempt to use glandular extracts to ward off senility is not as simple as the explanation. Dr. Laurent, in his once popular book, Old Age Deferred, entrolled thyroid as the preserver of youth. But any physician knows the unsatisfactory, to say the least, consequences of ill-advised thyroid medication. They weren't into it. They were into feeding these glandulars with vitamins, minerals, proteins, and herbs. It is apparent that the thyroid in most cases had compensatively regressed using medication, by the way. And Dr. Lee is right. When you use synthetic hormone for the thyroid shuts down. And the client's symptomatology is all there. It's just that their blood levels are normal. If it had not reduced its activity, it would not have caused toxic effects, which are often observed along with other signs of hypothyroidism. Without the synergistics of the thyroid, it is possible to have simultaneously symptoms of both hypo and hyperthyroidism. These synergists include, so he's saying, if you want to support the thyroid, you have to also use pituitary, parathyroid, thymus, gonad, spleen, liver at least. Now, listen, we know that people can't take all of these things, but within the year people can take support from most of these things. And we wonder why conditions like thyroid, Parkinson's today, because we're not empowering the whole body. But that's what these Dr. Lee and others were looking at. Probably they include all calcium metabolizers and all protein metabolizers. That's why I put this in. My concluding thoughts is we have to put it together for people. Protofood, the products that provide to support the acetylcholine, products that support all of the other neurotransmitters that I reviewed earlier. Look at the first product, talk about the parathyroids, that he says in this. The parathyroids, thyroid, spleen, gonads, pituitary, among the endocrines that influence calcium metabolism. Here is this other key with the parathyroids, thyroid being a part of the parathyroids, and the spleen. Those are the first three, everyone. The ultimate solution to the cataract problem lies no doubt in replacing some or one or more of the specific hormones that are lacking because of endocrine disability. Here's another. Pituitary hormones are known to maintain the activity and integrity of thyroid, parathyroid, adrenals, gonads, pancreas. So, and the final one here is one other quote. Talk about other supplements that are needed other than these primary four that we talked about today. House says the lack of vitamin B causes atrophy of the parathyroids. And so we can look at Parkinson as the priority in my book, along with the other notes that you have here today. Now, you could say, well, you know, my Parkinson's clients, they can't take it all. But I've given you a range through which you can decide and switching things around that they need the most. You can cycle it with these individuals. But those, the RNA, the St. John's wort, neurotrophin, and the Kalma Plus are your top four. So remember that many conditions in life are because of, as I started with today, the fact that of what has been put into our memory field, into the memory of ourselves. And I want to close with this. When something significant happens in our lives, the emotionally charged experience gets encoded in the brain. Karen mentioned about the death of her brother. Absolutely. All of these things in our lives affect us. We may not even know the true significance of this experience, yet it and other emotionally charged memories will affect everything we do in the future, from who we choose for companionship to what we do for a living. By reclaiming these memories stored in our brains, we can understand rationally how the past continually influences our conscious minds and our everyday actions and realities. But this is really the part I wanted to leave with you. We have other memories besides those in our brains. Memories and experiences and the emotions associated with them are also encoded systematically in all the tissues and organs of our bodies. Parkinson's is Parkinson's of this truth? Is this part of the brain affected? Well, we certainly looked at it. from addiction to pleasures, that part of the body, if it breaks down, if it gets traumatized, if it doesn't have the right genetic output, yes, it has a huge effect on Parkinson's and Parkinson's syndrome. These memories and emotions speak to us, not via the rational processes. You can't figure this out intellectually of the brain, but by means of symptoms and disease in our bodily organs. A substantial number of scientific studies have been indicated that certain emotional and psychological patterns associated with diseases in specific organs, and other studies support the link between specific memories. Let me just shrink this down here a little bit, move it. Specific memories and emotions and certain organ-specific diseases, such as breast cancer, coronary heart disease, and Parkinson's disease. And here it is. So this is why I have said and emphasized to you in other lectures that cleansing our body, working especially with our digestive system, helps a lot of these memories that are laden within the different tissues of our bodies to surface and to move out. And also to live a life where we acquire good memories that enter the tissues of our bodies, and therefore keep our organs, glands, and tissues healthy. The antithesis of this breakdown is the coming together. And so these particular conditions, we see so much neurological patterns as we looked at today. Certainly different types of cancer, breast cancer being, I think, #1 now, and coronary heart disease. We see all of this related to the health and well-being based on what we are putting in our bodies, how we live our lives. And so it's been great to be with you all in this hour and, a little over an hour and a half. I'm sorry again for the PowerPoint quality and a little bit of the confusion in the reading, but I'm going to redo this for you and get these notes to you along with the recording. So if anybody has any questions, though, we talked a lot about a lot today, and I'll leave the recording going and see if I can answer some of these questions for you. Does anyone have anything or questions about what Karen said?
So it's Constance. Hi.
Hey.
I'm just a little concerned about any undiagnosed cancer or enhancing a cluster like of oncocells that might become stronger when we give RNA. Or is just a stupid thought I'm having?
No, well, I appreciate your concern, but remember, if the RNA factor is healthy, it is actually not going to allow those that genetic mutation to cross over into the cellular. It actually will stop the replication. It won't increase the replication.
Gotcha.
So,
okay.
So RNA is actually, based on what you're saying, needed more than most anything else.
So more needed than ever. Okay, great.
Yes.
Thank you, dear.
So remember that when you get that article, you can read through how RNA works and some of the other things that I put in here. But RNA is the keeper of the normal genetic crossover and replication. So remember that. Okay.
Oh, I have a question for
Sure.
you about the pineal gland.
Mm-hmm.
What is there to be done for calcification of the pineal gland when you can see that in an X-ray?
I'm so glad you said that. And it's in my recent class on the endocrine, and it's on my YouTube channel. And it's also I devoted a whole hour and a half on the pineal gland. So fluoride is the main, I don't have this slide up, but fluoride is the main culprit, and they're from water. So if your brain is calcifying, and as you're saying, which is so accurate, fluoride is the main calcifier of it. What it calcifies first is the pineal gland. And so that is very important to realize that we need to either make sure that whatever water we're drinking, because we should be drinking a lot of water a day, that we're not getting water with fluoride. Now, most water filters will take out chlorine, but they do not take out fluorine. So there's two filters that I recommend. One is a model that stays right on your counter, and another you put under your sink, which is the one that I have. So that is the solution for that. But you're right. This is a huge factor as we all get into our latter years, the last 30 years of our life, from 60 to 90 is what I'm considering the last 30 years, pretty much.
Is that apply?
Mm-hmm.
So do you know if a Kangen machine, the alkaline water, takes fluoride out?
Alkaline water will increase. That makes things worse, not better. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Will apply to what you're showering in too, Joseph? Does it matter what you're showering in because you're getting fluoride through the...
Well, yes. And Dr. Gaeta, Michael Gaeta, a couple of years ago, gave me a shower that filters out the chlorine and fluorine. So that's the one that I use. I don't know the name of it, but yeah.
What's the one concern is on the counter?
My concern is the children that are actually forced to take fluoride in their early development years. My grandchildren, I'll tell you what an argument we had within the family for my two grandchildren that took it for the first 4 years.
It breaks my heart. It literally is one of the things I can't even emotionally get involved with it because it hurts me so much what the American Dental Association is doing to these children. It's criminal.
Are there any studies? Probably not. It would be interesting to do, to go back and see these kids that were treated with fluoride. Did they develop or have more risk to Parkinson's? And those that did not would be very interesting.
A lot of the studies, of course, I don't want to get into conspiracy theories because I'm not, but a lot of those studies are there, but have been suppressed.
Yeah.
Look what I just read to you about the parathyroid glands. Nobody knows about that. If I hadn't taught it to you, you would never have known.
Nope.
Yep. So that was in the early 20th century. It's all been gone, proven false, but it's not. So,
Joseph?
Yes.
Karna here. To get back to Michelle's question, do you think EDTA would be a good treatment to help get the calcium out of the glands?
Well, any of these substances that chelate, you're talking about a chelating agent, right?
Yes.
Yes. It does get them into solution. It does. And I have known people that it does help. But my cautionary note, anytime you're using a chemical, which that's a chemical, you don't want to deteriorate other parts of the body, which is the lumen of the blood vessel wall. So that is, I'm not saying that it does, but that is my concern if you're asking me.
Well, what about chlorophyll then?
Well, chlorophyll, of course, is the great blood cleanser. Yes. So the only difference between plant blood and our blood is plant blood has a magnesium molecule, our blood has an iron molecule. So if you want to, yes, you know, enhance your blood quality, chlorophyll is definitely the product. Now, I have in my book, I have a good chelation protocol, and that's mainly for heavy metals. But it certainly would help with calcification as well. Now, remember that the reason they use these chemical substances to clear these chemicals out is because the nutrition that the different parts of the body need, it doesn't have. So what does it do to patch an artery? To give you an example, it will use calcium, which shouldn't be in the blood. It shouldn't be used for that, maybe a little bit, but not much, or fat. And that is why you get occlusion on the arteries, because you don't have the other healing factors for arterial integrity, i.e., what is that? We talked about vitamin E today, vitamin C, even vitamin K, which they accuse that would cause blood clots. It actually is part of the healing of that lumen of the artery, so the body doesn't overpave that with substances that block the arteries. So it's kind of a little bit off subject, but so realize that if the adequate nutrition is there and we don't, and it's not overrun by the chemicals that influence our lives, if we can stay away from those, the chlorine, the fluorine, we won't need to flush ourselves out with these other chemicals. So it's quite something to think about, how you maintain this balance, you know.
Yeah, thank you. I have a second question about the RNA. So many people are getting the mRNA shots. I am unsure if I am wise to give those people RNA or not.
Well, I don't normally talk about anything with COVID or the vaccines. It's against because there's so much, it's ruined relationships. But this is what I will say in general. If you have enough of the natural RNA substance in your body, it will help regulate anything from the outside, or the outside of the cell influence, or inside of the cell. As I said, the RNA, the true RNA, if it's there in adequate amounts, will monitor how it influences the cell in a bad way and how it influences the cell in a good way.
Thank you.
That will be my general comment. I am going to do an hour with you on I'm not going to mention the current viruses that everyone's dealing with, but I am going to talk about recovery from bacterial and from viral illnesses. So that's coming down the pike here. Yes.
Yes.
And what is the under-sink filter that you're using to remove
I don't remember the name of it. It's in if you go on my YouTube channel, in my recent lecture that I just did last time on the endocrine system. They're about $1,000, but it's wonderful. It's great. The water tastes wonderful too. You cannot, yeah.
Do you think some things you've talked about with Cyruta and fish oil could help with the calcium buildup in the pineal? Get it into the tissue?
Yes, because the pineal is fed by capillaries, right? That would carry these other substances in to keep them, keep the integrity. If you keep the integrity of the micro blood vessels, the small capillaries, you keep the integrity of what's the ability of that endocrine gland to receive the proper nutrients. Absolutely. So indirectly, yes. My answer to your question would be yes. So yes, the vitamins and minerals, as I indicated in the beginning, about the influence, even about parts related to Parkinson's, is you've got to have enough vitamin E in your diet, in your lifestyle. So, and C and A, as I said. So that's why someone had mentioned chlorophyll. That has vitamin A, E, F, and K all in one product. And synthetic forms of A, E, F, and K, or more synthesized, are not natural. Chlorophyll, and they are not fat soluble in content. Chlorophyll pearls is all fat soluble, contains all those 4 fat soluble vitamins. So if you wanted to put it all in one product, there it is. So as far as fat soluble vitamins, not water soluble, you'd have to take those separately. Of course, your B, your C are all water soluble. So
will today's lecture be on the YouTube channel soon?
Yes, we got Lynn and I next week. She's got some visitors in town, but next week, Lynn and I will get and fix all of those notes for you.
Okay, so we'll wait till next week to get. Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you all. We're right at 2 hours here. What 11, 12, 1, 2 hours, yes. So thank you all for being on. And
thanks, Joe.
Yes, I'll see you in a couple weeks. Blessings
Keep well.
to you all.
Joseph,
thank you,
had
Karen.
a quick question.
Sure.
Quickly, can you really quick remind me about the difference between Neuroplex and Neurotrophin and when we would use one or the other?
So Neurotrophin would be the first product you would use for any brain injury, any situation where you're working with where you need pineal gland, because remember, pineal is in Neurotrophin. So we don't have a pineal product anymore. Lee used to make one, and they stopped it. So so that would be the one to use to get for the brain itself. Neuroplex, and that would be at least 3 twice a day for 3 months is the length of period of time. So any type of neurological disorder or anything brain related, you want to start with the big guns, which is Neurotrophin. Now, if you want to use a formula that has Neurotrophin, hypothalamus, and pituitary in combination, like we looked at today. Now, Karen said an interesting thing. If you listen to her story, she said, I take Neurotrophin and I take Neuroplex. So she has broadened, or this chiropractor she works with, she has broadened her scope of what she's putting into her body and her system. So the Neuroplex, again, is going to be anywhere from 4 to 6 a day, both of them on an empty stomach, but it's going to have a broader scope of including pineal, hypothalamus, and pituitary. So someone with a Parkinsonian type situation would do well with both. But first, I would start with the Neurotrophin if you're just going to go with one product, then the Neuroplex, a bottle, then go back to the Neurotrophin. But these individuals will need those 1 or 2 of those substances for the rest of their life, because now the immune system is attacking that organ. Now it's attacking the brain. It's attacking the pituitary. It's attacking, we don't know which one that it's attacking, but now it is. Because that is the process of breakdown. That's the end result of a breakdown where the body gets rid of the necrotic proteins in the blood, cleans those up, then goes to the primary organ. I would suspect in Parkinson's that it's all four: the brain, the pineal, especially. When you read through the articles where they talk about what part of the brain is not making the dopamine, and that is not the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus stores it, but it's being made in this other part, right around the pineal gland. So, so the answer to your question is you would do it in a sequence: neurotrophin, then neuroplex, and then go back to neurotrophin ongoingly. 3 months of one, 3 months of the other, all year long. Someone with a neurological defect or a neurological challenge, these have to be, because they remove the burden on that organ or gland so it can heal.
So has any of this been used in autistic kids?
Yes, the one I did 2 weeks ago on the endocrine, the part on the pineal, that they have found now that autism is caused by a dysfunction of the pineal gland. I showed, it's a recent article from 2017, that they have now proven that autism is a dysfunction of the pineal gland. Yeah.
Thank you.
What would the protein, the vitamin, and the minerals? You said vitamin E. What would be the mineral again for the pineal?
The pineal would be vitamin U, so that the ochrapepsin E3 is vitamin U. The mineral is zinc, and then the protein is either neurotrophin, as I just reviewed, or neuroplex. Okay. And the herb is gotu kola, as I talked about today. Yes.
I have a quick question, Joseph. Just in related to PMGs alone, say you've got somebody on a PMG because of an autoimmune issue. Is there any point in which you finally come to say, okay, you've had enough of that PMG, we can take you off of that now?
Yeah, Mark and I have talked about a lot about this over the years. What we decided is you give it a protomorphogen a cycle of 3 months. Then you take them off of it. Then you observe, then you have to observe though, does their symptomatology come back? Let me give you an example. Mark and I have worked with a former NFL player over the years. His wife is a nutritionist. They came back to school. In fact, they may be coming this year. I don't know. But he got so bad with brain function that he would just wander off if she didn't keep an eye on him. He is totally recovered, totally a normal person now. Took time, took, a few years and her tender, loving care of him. Now, we did a little experiment and took him off. He's on both. He's on both, as Karen is, neurotrophin and neuroplex, because these aren't like miracle substances, even though I was so glad Dr. Harrower described it that way, because sometimes it seems that way. We took him off of those, and his symptoms, he started getting worse again. Yep. So there are cases where you have to stay on them forever. But normally, to answer your question, 3 months on, 3 months, and then get them off, for a month or two, see if the symptoms reoccur. The other one that occurs, symptoms can reoccur, 2 other examples, is Hashimoto's. If they're not on thytrophin, they decline. So there's one that's permanent, and heart conditions. When the heart, when you get cardio, and this is your area of expertise, when you get these chronic cardiomyopathy cases, you get that thickening of the wall, you'd get them off cardiotrophin, it begins to get worse again.
Okay.
So this day and age, there may be occasions where they'll have to stay on them the rest of their life. Dr. Lee's time, you know, a few months, you wouldn't need it again. That's the hope. But unfortunately, we have so many chemical influences in our lives from, you know, from the radiation from the towers to, to the chemicals in our food and our water, as we talked about today. So, you know, we have to constantly be aware, and I don't like to use the term fight back, but we have to put in place the substances we put in our body and our lifestyle that are going to keep in check the impositions from our food, from our environment, and from our stressful lives. And that is the reality now, you know. So thank you all very much, and I'll look forward to speaking with you in a couple of weeks, 2 weeks.
I can't believe we kept you on another half an hour, Joe, so sorry.
Hey, listen, I love you all. I will stay on all day with you, but we have to do other things. So
thank you, Joseph.
Blessings to you all. Take care.
Thank you. Bless you.
Bless you.